Thanks for joining the OTR Group this day with guest Jim Holcomb, the CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. He's against an effort to raise taxes on the rich. Our lead story, an update on school funding, they're making progress, and a new candidate for governor on the R side, his name, Tom Leonard. On the OTR panel, Craig Mauger, Elena Dernbaugh, and Zoe Clark. Sit in with us as we get the inside out. Off the Record.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Bellwether Public Relations, a full-service strategic communications agency partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and issue advocacy. Learn more at bellwetherpr.com. And now, this edition of Off the Record with Tim Skubic.
Welcome back to Studio C for another edition of Off the Record. Our thanks to Chuck Stokes for piloting the program last week. Thanks, Chuck. We got 3 weeks ago, you all sat around the table, said there was no way in Hades that they're going to get the school aid budget by July 1st. Remember, Ms. Clark? Do you remember?
I don't know. Play the tape. The tape.
I just happen to have it. Here we go. Anyway, so here they are. They're going to come darn close.
I mean, they also could have written numbers on a paper napkin and sent that to the Senate, too, with every chance what the House passed has to pass the Senate. But yeah.
Look, at July 1st is important for the schools. I talked to Tim Kelly yesterday. By the way, he and Camilleri, his counterpart in the Senate, they chair the K-12 budget, had breakfast together last week. Yeah, and they're talking and they're getting done. He said, we're 70% done. If we don't hit July 1st, we'll hit it within a week. In government work, that's good enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I think one of the interesting developments this week was yesterday, you had a group of school organizations, principals, school boards, administrators, send a letter to the legislative leaders and saying, hey, you guys need to get this done immediately.
That's the second letter. They sent one a week and a half ago.
And then they said also in this letter, which I think this is the fascinating part to watch, they said you should not balance a roads deal or an income tax deal on the backs of Michigan students. And that's what I think is, there's 70% there. Matt Hall has this plan, Speaker Hall has a plan to try to find $3 billion for roads. If you look at the numbers, it looks like they're finding that money in the school aid fund budget right now by using reserves, by moving money to higher ed, then moving the general fund money from higher ed to whatever is going to be in this budget, the part of the budget they haven't released yet. You have the school group saying, we don't want you taking this money from schools that are struggling right now to try to make this road deal happen. So how can the Democrats and the Republicans reach a deal on this unless they figure out this roads thing as well, because that's the mystery in all of it.
You're assuming that the letter works.
I'm not assuming that it works. I'm stating that it happened. I'm stating that it happened. I don't know if it works or not, but I think it points to the question that we don't know the answer to. Yeah. If you're the Republicans, how do you do a school aid budget without leaving some money for roads? And if you're Democrats, how do you let the Republicans essentially hold out billions of dollars for some yet to be determined road deal?
If you're House Republicans, you'll say that your plan has the biggest per pupil increase out of all of the plans that have been presented.
The Speaker keeps saying this, and now in this letter from the school groups, they say the budget that the House Republicans have put out is, quote, deeply flawed. The school groups are not excited about this budget that the House Republicans have passed. So how do these two things fit together?
They're not excited to have to find their own money for universal breakfast and lunch and transportation and all of these categoricals that were eliminated?
Yeah, and that's where it gets into, this has been going on for, decades. How do you define what is good about a school aid fund budget?
I just keep thinking this whole year about deadlines and this legislature. Only we are, in the middle of June, halfway through the year, 5 bills have been passed, and every single one of these bills simply passed was because there was a deadline.
This is true.
Right? You had minimum wage because this February 21st deadline. Then you had the bills to push back transparency, paperwork, uploading because there was a deadline. Then you have the extension or the okay of less school days because of the storm up north, because there was a deadline.
But Ms. Clark, when you were doing your graduate paper...
No, I was the early... Tim, you know me. I'm such an A-type. I didn't wait till the last minute. Come on. I'm just saying we know this is what the legislature... this is not unnormal. I agree, but what I think is fascinating this time is we have a July 1st deadline. Statutory, fair. Yes. But is this going to be one of those things that they are willing to push back on? And I think that's a sign of what your priorities
Well, if you
are.
took the rhetoric on that stage that you did, you did a nice job on the island with the four
the
leaders.
quadrant.
Yes, the mud wrestling match. Okay.
We should say this was, just so folks know, this was the first time that the quadrant, right, the four leaders were ostensibly together on a stage.
Well, if you took that rhetoric that came out of that event and look at where we are today, folks, that is progress.
It's progress, and it's not surprising. I mean, at some point they have to get together and get something done. I mean, you had the speaker say previously, we shouldn't be having these closed-door meetings to negotiate things.
And we're going to blow past the July 1st deadline.
Yeah, and he said that too, and now he's talking about the July 1st deadline and saying it's the Democrats that want to blow by it, and now he's having closed-door meetings to negotiate the budget. So how much of this is just...
Actually, he never changed his mind. He always wanted July 1st. That's what I was told yesterday.
He was misleading us?
I don't know.
Wait a minute, just let me write that down. Speaker misleads press corps. There's an original thought.
The July 1st deadline does not matter as it is in state law, but it matters to these school groups, and it matters to the local district leaders.
If you're going to negotiate with teachers a contract and you don't know how much money you're getting, it's a little tough to do.
It's a real question. You can't guess it either. There was some people who were saying, you kind of know where it's going to be, and it's like you look at the House budget, you look at the Senate budget, you have no idea where this is going to end up.
And local governments too, right? It's not just higher ed, and it's not just K through 12 schools. There's local governments that are on July 1st deadlines also.
Yeah. Where is that budget to be found?
Well, this is what I'm saying is it is as much as folks are saying, well, we're getting close, we're 70% there. 70% does not mean a lot for folks that are trying to balance their budget in communities.
Of little faith. Oh, ye of little
Well, you
faith.
can roll this tape in a few weeks then, can't you?
Then I got two to play for you. All right, let's talk about Tom Leonard running for governor.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, this is a guy that has run statewide. He is well liked by a lot of the Michigan Republican Party activists, people that have been involved with the party for a long time. He is, if this term matters any longer, he is a conservative, a fiscal conservative person. He's governed with a conservative kind of ideology. But this whole situation with President Trump and Tom Leonard lingers over all of this.
And what is that?
The situation is that at one point, President Trump nominated Tom Leonard to be the U.S. Attorney for the Western District. And then a few years later, he turns around and issues an entire letter bashing Tom Leonard as Tom Leonard was running for Attorney General. Trump is so influential with the primary electorate. Where is Trump going to come down on this? And how does Tom Leonard walk that line?
I've heard from folks that he's going to be branded as too centrist, too moderate for the Republican Party today.
There's a kiss of death.
Based on what?
I literally asked Tom Leonard that yesterday. I said to him, like, can you actually win a Republican primary in today's Republican party? I think what's going to be really interesting, I mean, to your point, of course, he said, of course I can, and, I'll work hard. Right.
That's why I'm running.
It's a great question, so I'm actually dropping out. No, of course he said he can, but I think what I'm thinking a lot about to that point is what is his lane in this primary. We certainly know that Donald Trump will be the huge, 800-pound gorilla in all of this. He gave a not so kind shout out, it seemed, to John James last week at the White House, saying he was not super necessarily happy that John James decided to run for governor, something that we've talked a lot about is being talked about in Lansing and D.C. I think what I'm really fascinated by, though, with this primary is, are we going to see what we saw in 2010 when you had, Hoekstra and then Mike Cox again, and Bouchard. And you then had Rick Snyder win.
Here's the deal.
it
totally different party now.
Totally different party
Yes, but the dynamics are the same. Tom Leonard's entrance into this race has now made it one of the candidates easier to win because they don't get as many votes.
I mean, every time,
Sure.
and we still don't know that there aren't going to be more candidates.
Remember, Mr. Snyder won with 30% of the primary vote, boys and girls.
This is what I am saying.
It seems like every candidate that gets in brings down that threshold that you need to win, as you're talking about. But I mean, there's so much more here. I mean, the Trump influence. Is Trump going to endorse John James? And then you get into this whole thing of, I've been watching this for a few years. Are we in the Republican side of politics in like a post-policy world where people's policy proposals, there's idea on what they're going to do to govern. Does that matter? I mean, Tom Leonard knows all that. Like, he has a policy agenda. He has these things he wants to work on. Are the voters going to care about that? Do the primary voters care?
What Republicans have been doing right now is they're just mirroring what's coming out of the federal level and mimicking it, copying it back. So
what is,
you have
what
policy?
Is Tom Leonard's trump card? Why do people, oh yeah, Tom Leonard, he's my guy?
I mean, what he says he's running on is going to be positivity, right? He keeps kind of talking about the Dan Campbell positive grit. When I talked to him, you know, he's talked about education, which we know, I think 2026, the gubernatorial election is going to be an education election.
Sure.
And it's something that Republicans and Democrats are going to have to come out with some policy proposals. The thing, again, that we have to note in all of this, though, is the Mike Duggan factor, which is just, again, as we're talking about what this election is going to look like and trying to hearken back to elections of past, having a strong independent candidate who Rich Schuba, who you had on the show a few weeks ago, says is actually pulling from Republicans and Democrats, makes this a race like any other.
I will say this about Tom Leonard. I mean, there are a lot of people that are discounting his chances in this primary, but what benefit does he have? That benefit is he is able to talk to the conservative base of the party, kind of that Tea Party faction, if they're still around. Remember, who did he make the energy chair? Gary Glenn, who went after consumers and DTE. He's one of the few people that kind of actually went after the utilities. But he also talks to like kind of the Republican donor base. He's a lobbyist right now. He was a finance chair for the Republican Party. So he's got this ability to kind of reach both sides. Will that matter in 2026? I don't know.
We're still a long way away.
Dana Nessel found something to do yesterday afternoon.
I mean, this is such a wild story, and I don't know if people understand fully the implications of this, but the attorney...
It's only a half-hour program.
I'll try. I'm looking at the clock ticking right now.
I can't buy more time for you.
The Attorney General of this state, who is a Democrat, sent agents to essentially raid the offices of the governor's economic development agency.
While the governor was out of the country.
In Australia.
Along with the director of the MEDC.
And can you and I said this yesterday to someone, can you imagine the phone call that took place between the MEDC office and the MEDC president who was in Australia? I don't know what time that would have occurred at in Australia.
The spokespeople were like, we're gonna let MEDC answer those questions.
If we could only hear the audio of the call that took place.
What's wrong with that? I mean, if she's got a job to do and she's after two people that she thinks broke the law and she needs more information, why not raid the joint?
I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, we have no idea what evidence the Attorney General's office has obtained. They've obviously gone before a judge and proven something to get the search warrants authorized.
Let's just point out, she is alleging that two people misused state grants for their businesses.
That's what they have been investigating, is this rush of state grants to some people who appeared, at least to records available, to be using them for things that could have benefited themselves. We'll find out more about this as the details become public.
If Craig had the authority, he would also raid the MEDC.
That's not true. I would love to see the records. I mean, FOIA requests, true.
Not the whole MEDC, just
I thought the the PR person had a great line. This is unwarranted. You know, barging in here.
And they literally had a warrant. Yeah, but it's fascinating.
All right, let's talk to Jim Holcomb, who has something to say about raising taxes on the rich. Mr. Holcomb, please.
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Let's check off some boxes. Have you guys fly-specked at the language of this ballot proposal that would raise the tax on the rich to fund the schools? Have you looked at the language?
We have looked at the language. We continue to look at it. But I want to start one point with the premise, taxing the rich. Let's be clear. We already tax people. The more income you make, the more taxes you pay. So it's kind of a speculative term. I'm sure it's been focused, tested, and polled, and everybody thinks it's kind of a cutesy term. But current law, the more you make, the more you pay.
All right, the box is not yet checked. Okay, so you're looking at the language. The question is, have you found a hook to haul them into court now?
Oh, I think this is a very poorly drafted ballot proposal. If you look at a lot of the vague terminology in it, new terms that are being used, I think this is, for many issues, this is going to lead to decades of litigation.
The question is it ripe for a lawsuit to block them now?
I think it's absolutely ripe that people are going to challenge this just the way it's drafted.
Including your group.
I'm going to say that we're going to continue to do the research. I'm not going to come out and say what we're going to do today because we have to do our due diligence. But a cursory reading of it just shows how poorly drafted it is. And it's either really sloppily drafted or purposely misleading. Either is unacceptable with the Constitution.
If you can keep it off the ballot, game over.
It's not game over, it's just better for policy. We need to have serious conversations about education and tax policy in the state, and this isn't the way to do it.
Out of all of these initiatives that are being floated right now, a referendum on the tipped minimum wage issue, you have this taxing wealthy individuals to provide funding for schools. Are you guys watching all of these at the chamber? Is there one that concerns you more than the other?
We absolutely look at everything. We talk to our members. We focus on what's going to be most impactful to the state. This tax proposal, the minimum wage proposal are certainly things we're focused on. Our staff digs into them. We routinely talk to our friends and allies, and we're looking for people who say, I want to make Michigan better. We don't need to be California. We don't need to be ballot-palooza. We don't need to be governing this way. We have elected leaders, and we need to hold them accountable. And for all of us and for voters, we need to engage. It's up to us to make sure we're sharing our opinion and vision with them.
Jim, I'm not sure if you saw the guest last week who was, behind this ballot proposal. And one of the things that she talked about was polling that they have that the message, right, tax the rich, polls really well. I'm curious, whether it's the legalese or what it would actually do. What does it mean in 2025 when there does seem to be this sort of vibe, right, against the billionaire class, folks coming out for Bernie Sanders? It's a message that's resonating with voters.
And that's the problem. They're working policy based on polling, but if you actually read the language and look at the impact, this is going to impact Main Street. This is going to hit real people and communities across our state. You're going to impact the entrepreneur, the small business owner. You're going to impact that family business that's just clawing every day to keep the doors open because they pay tax on their profit as income. But they aren't taking a big paycheck home every week. They're taking that money, they're reinvesting it, they're hiring staff, they're expanding their operations. This isn't about penalizing them, and that's unfortunately what they're going to do. They are going to damage our economy, and they're going to crush small business.
Well, and kind of to Craig's point with a lot of proposals, this is looking to generate more revenue. We've also seen discussions in the legislature about increasing corporate income tax, again, going after those who are making the most to try to generate more revenue for the state. Does the chamber have any thoughts on kind of these other attempts to increase revenue, putting it on Michiganders who are making more and trying not to put it on Main Street?
But you aren't putting it on Michiganders who pay more. If you want to avoid this tax, you can, and unfortunately many people will, then move out of the state. You're going to hit Main Street. You're going to hit that small business because they are pass-through entities, and you're really going to create a lot of damage. We have plenty of money, I think, in the state. What we need to do is spend it more efficiently. Whether it's for education, whether it's for roads, for whatever program we want, we need to have a better, more robust. You talked earlier in your session about the budget process. That's what this is about. It's about spending money efficiently and wisely. This is exactly the wrong proposal at the wrong time. You're going to make Michigan less competitive. The Tax Foundation has research out there that shows the negative correlation. The more that you increase taxes and become less competitive in tax rankings, the more people move out of the state. There's a direct correlation. We need to attract people to Michigan and make sure we're welcoming to all. This is the exact wrong approach.
But what if they're right? What if this $1.7 billion helps to turn around a failing education system?
But I don't think they are right. I think if you just look at the terminology in the bill, they say it's about education. They aren't. This is nothing. There's no concrete plan in what they've proposed to improve education. In fact, if you look at the word...
You don't put that in a ballot proposal. You put in the means to get there.
No, but they're trying to do that. When you use the term like local public school districts, what does that even mean? The legal research that I've seen thus far, you're going to exclude a lot of schools and you're going to exclude tens of thousands of kids. Why aren't we looking to help all kids so every kid has a chance in Michigan?
Language in the language that I saw that they sent me did have some spending. Here's where you should spend this money on. I think class sizes was one of the things.
Yep.
Salary increases.
Salary increases for teachers.
But you have to break that down because words matter. What is attracting and retaining quality educators? What is an educator? Is that only a teacher? Is it every person who comes in contact with a student? Is it support staff? When you talk about
Maybe it's all of them.
But we don't know, and that's what you shouldn't be muddling up the Constitution with vague terms. If you talk about classrooms, that's another good one. Class sizes. No, it says in there you have to spend money in classrooms. In the language,
look at it.
you're looking at the preface up above. I'm talking about the actual wording in the constitutional ballot. It talks about classrooms, and they talk about career and vocational technical education. Great thing. But what is a classroom? There's a lot of kids who get that type of training. They don't do it in a traditional classroom. That's why that definition matters. What about the kids who take something in construction management and they learn it on site? Can you help them? What about virtual learning? The teacher's not in the classroom, the student's not in the classroom. Can you expend money to help them learn?
This is a question that I had coming in here today. What does the Michigan Chamber want to see happen to improve Michigan schools? Is that on your organization's radar? How important is that right now to the future of the business
absolutely
climate?
vital. I think talent, attraction, and retention in the state is vital. It's vital not only to our members, but the entire.
How do you do it, though?
You do it through good, serious policy debates. You don't do it through some gimmickry and
So
ballot
what's the
proposal.
policy that you all have? You said earlier that, hey, we don't necessarily need more money to improve the schools. And I've heard that said a lot in the Capitol lately, but I'm not hearing a specific plan for how you do that.
And that's where we all need to engage. That's why you need to have a debate. It's not incumbent upon one person, one group, or one entity to say, here's the plan. We should be using the process. You should have real substantive debates in committees and say, this is what we need. We know reading scores are abysmal. We know math is abysmal. I'm not saying that I sit at the Michigan Chamber and I have the answer. What I'm saying is we're committed to education for all kids, not a certain subset, and we can't damage our economic climate in our
Wouldn't
towns.
additional money for literacy programs help that?
Is that covered under the ballot proposal? If that's not in the classroom, do we know that would be covered? That's the point. This is so poorly drafted. You can have a lot of platitudes, but can you really get to actionable items?
Do you think that the state legislators should be shifting money away from the school aid fund to essentially free up dollars for a roads deal?
I think the legislators should be looking to balance our budget and do it most efficiently. I can't comment on that because I haven't looked at the specific proposal on it. I'm not going to sit here and say, pick this over that. What I'm saying is they're elected to do that. It's our job to weigh in, and they're in the process right now. As you mentioned earlier, both the Senate and the House are looking at record per pupil funding. Even the governor said in her State of the State, we're spending more and getting less. We're spending more per pupil than most states and getting a worse return on our investment.
So we're talking a lot about possible constitutional amendments, referendum, whether it has to do with the minimum wage, the possibility of ranked choice voting is out there. But one ballot proposal that we absolutely know voters will vote on in 2026 is whether or not they want to see a constitutional convention. Is the chamber going to take a position or a stand on yes or no on a con?
We actually have that coming up. We'll be talking with our members about it. Historically, we've been opposed to that. I think you open up a lot of problems when you put everything on, but I think we're at a point in time when people are saying, do we need to take a global look at it and look at what are the costs and the benefits and what can really be done, but also what's the harm that could happen when you open up the entire thing to deal making.
What does your gut tell you?
My gut tells me it's a bad thing to do.
Would that, based on just this first read, would that be your recommendation?
I'm not going to make a recommendation until we do all the research. And my job is to listen to my members and make sure I'm articulating their voice. So I'm going to make sure I listen to them first before I take a firm stance.
Were you surprised that Matt Hall thought it was a good idea, the Speaker of the House, to revisit and have a con?
No, I think everybody should be talking about this. I think we get into a situation where we all want to draw the line in the sand too early. We all ought to be contemplating these issues. We ought to have serious debates. We ought to have conversations, because you may say, I may have one opinion, and you give me new facts and evidence. I go, oh my gosh, that's really good though. I really need to change my opinion. We've gotten away from that in the process, and I think that's why we're in the situation we are. We're getting harmful proposals like the current one we're talking about, because we don't have the conversations constantly and they aren't substantive. They're political.
We've made news here today because you just agreed on con with a guy named Curtis Hertel. Stop the presses. He called it a disaster.
See, bipartisanship everywhere.
Curtis is a good man. I don't have any problem agreeing with him.
But look, at the argument is, from the Republican standpoint, there's a lot of stuff that the Democrats have done over the last 10 years that we want to go in and undo. You believe that should be done?
I believe that that's probably their opinion. It's up to them to decide how they're going to support it. What I said is I'm going to listen to my members to see what they support.
Well, don't you want to put right to work back in the state law?
I think when we got rid of right to work was absolutely the worst decision we could have made. It's made us less competitive. But you have to look at the entirety of a process, not single issue. And that's the problem we have in politics right now. We're single issue. We're single issue voters. We're single issue legislators. And we're single issue on much of our conversation. There needs to be serious substantive debate. We're talking about education in Michigan. We need to make sure Michigan is good for all kids, that they all have a pathway to greatness. And, we don't need the tricks that are going on right now.
The Michigan Chamber used to engage heavily in Supreme Court races in the state. You're talking about challenging this potential ballot proposal in the courts. Democratic nominated justices have a 6-1 majority. Do you all have a plan to get back a conservative majority on the court?
We still engage heavily in Supreme Court races, and we're still always going to engage. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat. We're going to support judicial candidates who are rule of law.
But do you have a plan to change what has occurred over the last 5 years with just ceding the ground, conservatives to liberal justices?
No, the plan is you continue to have the fight. They've outspent the justices and people supporting them who have won in the last election, outspent people $15 million to $2 million.
On a scale of 1 to 10 on bipartisanship, what do you give this legislature and governor?
I probably give them a 5. I think they're right in the middle. I think there's a lot of conversation.
10
How many
seconds
bills
to
they
get
passed?
One for each of the bills that have been passed.
Yeah. But maybe that's not a bad thing. That's the whole thing with divided government. You need to have conversations. You don't want things jammed through. That's what we had wrong when we had the trifecta before. They were jamming through bills that didn't have support, but they could do it politically.
Arguably, they're not having conversations, though.
Well, I don't think you should take everything you see and everything that people will give to you to report is gospel. I think there are a lot of conversations happening. I think people talk more than we want to acknowledge.
Holcomb, thanks for the wisdom.
Thank you.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, everybody, see you next week for more Off the Record right here. Thanks for tuning in.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Bellwether Public Relations, a full-service strategic communications agency partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and issue advocacy. Learn more at bellwetherpr.com. For more Off the Record, visit WKAR.org. Michigan public television stations have contributed to the production costs of Off the Record.